the deep end, and we'll be taking over yours truly session this morning. So just as a quick by means of the agenda, I'll just be providing you with a short update of what we've been doing. Then just to give you some idea of the indie landscape and what the indies are winning and how well our sector is performing, we'll give you an insight into some of the recent wins. Then it's the showcase with the man of the moment, our man, myth, legend, Phil McDonald, BCM's partner and managing director. And then lastly, just some upcoming event initiatives so you know what to tune into in the next few months. I feel like we sit here every 3 months and we say the same thing. And the last 3 months is no different. It has been an extremely busy 3 months for the IMAA as we focus on our pillars with our partners, our members, and important initiatives to the wider media sector. So we kicked off the last 3 months with our pitch chiller, 72 of our media agencies involving themselves in this pitching process. We then Sam and I went down to RMIT University, where we spent some time with some students introducing them to the IMAA Academy and also to your partnerships and what you guys provide from a learning and development perspective. We've had some fun with our partners. So a lot of the people on the call today came along to our Brisbane event. We've then been down at Melbourne. And then most recently, we also made the trip over to South Australia, where we're trying to galvanise the South Australian independent market to start to operate similar to our Brisbane and Sydney and WA markets and come together. We've had times with our partners. So as you can see there, JCD, where we worked with Thread Together. We're on a harbour cruise with IAS. We've spent time with Spotify. We have movies with Val Morgan on the weekend. And then importantly, it's initiatives that we're working on. So last week we launched Female Leaders of Tomorrow. Currently, Sam is in Brisbane, where he's launching the program today, and then we're in Melbourne later in the week. So thank you, partners, because for everything you're leaning in is helping make our independent and media sector a better place. Just an update on the Academy. So, we constantly speak about it, but the IMAA Academy is the biggest investment that we've made, and it's not only in the independent sector, but it's really about educating the wider media sector. And it's great that so many of our partners on the call today have leaned in. We're really excited. So, as Sam and I constantly joke about, we have been nominated for the LearnX Awards, which is the Academy Awards / Oscars of the education sector. Sam and I are in Melbourne on the 26th, and we're hoping that we can walk away from the podium with a gold, silver or bronze, which will really start to, show the wider community what the IMAA Academy stands for. 15 media courses currently and 27 skill set courses. The SBS, 8 courses on DE&I, and also there's additional business in a box courses. So courses on leadership, project management, marketing and technology. So overall, the Academy is really providing something for everybody. Indie Insights. So I just want to, show this slide today because it's really important everyone understands, not only what the independent sector are doing, but currently what they're actually winning in market, which just shows the strength of our indies. Kicking off with one media company, they recently won Glasshouse Fragrances and they pulled it away from a holding company, which is just another testament to, the sheer scale that our indies are currently operating. Mentor Marketing Group over in WA secured the Scott's National portfolio. Media 33 have secured Barry's Drinks. Love Media have secured Maytel Group and also Petshaw. Admatics have secured Royal Wolf. And Hal Watson & Co., who have recently won a string of awards, have also secured Sellies. But I guess, it's a great segue for me and makes my job a lot easier to also, focus on BCM, who won Doctors in Demand and also Messy Fragrances, which is a massive win, but also testament to BCM. So we're about to hear from, hence my segue, Phil McDonald, who is the partner and managing director at BCM, but also, and I'm going to say importantly for us, someone who has been an absolute champion for the independent sector for the past 4 years since our inception, from being on the leadership team to now as a board director, where he's deputy chair to Jackie Alley. So welcome, Phil McDonald.
Thank you, Beck. It's really nice to be here and be able to share a few so-called insights with everybody that's jumped on the call today.
Great. Thanks so much, Phil. So as I said to everyone in the previous slide, so look, I do apologise. There'll be no jazz hands from Sam today, purely me reading off my notes and hopefully getting a bit of insight from Phil so you can understand, one, how an agency leader thinks, but also use this opportunity yourself that if you do have questions, by all means, add them to the chat box. And at the end, I'll get Tian to call them out. But Phil, let's start off by, not everyone might know a bit about you. Could you tell us some of your background and most importantly, your journey to owning BCM?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been in the business for many, many years, starting in an independent agency and then moving pretty much into about 20 years in holding companies. And for the end of that chapter of my life, for the last 3.5, 4 years, I was the regional CEO for Australia and New Zealand for VML Y&R, which was a digital and obviously creative brand agency. And then towards the end of my tenure, there was a lot of interesting things going on in the holdco world, but in particular WPP, where I was sitting. And I kind of realised that the higher you went up in that world, ironically, the almost the less power that you had. And I always wanted to kind of, given my career started in the independent kind of world, wanted to go back. I knew the two existing partners at BCM for many years, walking in and out of pitches in front of them and behind them, and sometimes winning and sometimes losing against them. And they were planning the next chapter for BCM. And after 6 months of garden leave, I was able to join them about nearly 6 years ago now. And there's now one of them out of the business. There's the other shareholder. The other is just a shareholder and a silent partner. And for the last 3 to 4 years, I've been running the business. And the thing I loved about BCM was because the agency has actually been around since the late 70s, would you believe? It always done media planning, buying, creative. It never divested in the sort of late 90s, 2000s, and it always done it. And that was the 100% pure reason I was drawn to being able to grab ownership of the company and lead the company forward. And so here we are now, navigating, the ever-changing landscape we all live in. But it's the integration of what we do is something I'm really passionate about, and the effectiveness that provides clients is something I really believe in.
That's a great answer. And look, it's obviously great to understand a bit about BCM, but also you personally. So tell us something, Phil, that maybe no one on the call knows.
Oh, that's a good question. The first campaign that I worked on, and this is no view of my political persuasion, because I'll work for anybody if they pay me well enough. I was thrown into. I was pretty much just in the middle of a journalism degree, and my old man had an agency, and his first agency client win since he started his agency was the Australian Labor Party. And I worked on an election campaign for the Australian Labor Party in Queensland. That was the first time the Labor Party had been in power in Queensland for 40 years. And it was for a guy by the name of Wayne Goss, who, if you ever look up him, it was an amazing premier of any state. And I learnt the ropes of advertising, running around printing bloody candidate calendars, shooting ads with Bob Hawke in them, presenting work to Graham Richardson and Paul Keating and Kevin Rudd and all these people, and kind of got thrown into advertising and media in the political realm. And nothing moves faster than a political advertising campaign. So I think that kind of gave me some good grounding. I spend less time, in fact, zero time talking political advertising now. In fact, don't really want to talk about which side of the coin at all, but it was just an interesting baptism of fire. The dynamic of an advertising campaign in an election is something that's very unusual, and was a great experience at the time.
Oh, well, there we go. That's something I didn't know. And now we know who to thank for the political landscape in the Queensland market.
Well, it's Liberal National Party now. It's all good things come to an end and everything gets changed. And, in like everything, change is good if we embrace it. And I think Queensland actually needed a new government, and they've got one. And I think it'll be good for Queensland. Who knows what'll happen federally. But I think, the success of all of us, no matter what we do or what side of the business we're in, is navigating change, because change is the only thing we know will happen for certain.
And I love you said that because it makes my job a lot easier sitting here interviewing, because it's a great segue to my second question. You know, we spoke about potentially on your first campaigns in political, but most recently, you know, BCM was tasked to create a campaign for Messi's new fragrance. And what an amazing win, obviously, for your agency, but also for the wider independent sector to really demonstrate the creativity that's in market and what you guys bring. Can you give us some background on how you won that pitch?
Yeah, basically, there's a company called Game On Product Group, which is a licensing arm of the Chemist Warehouse Group. And these guys are incredible guys. They actually won a global tender to manufacture, distribute, and market a fragrance for Leo Messi management, which you probably can imagine. And if you can't, it is a global behemoth in itself. He's probably one of the greatest footballers of all time, if not the greatest, and godlike in Europe and South America, and certainly the southern part of the US. So they won this pitch against companies from all over the world. They Chemist Warehouse are completely in-house and they do their own thing. But they wanted an opinion. They wanted a different creative way into this, and they wanted an integrated agency that understood how all the channels work. So we were invited to pitch, and that was probably about this time last year, actually. So we did. I think the pitch went on for about 3 months as they deliberated and changed and refined and asked us to do a bit more work here, there, and everywhere. We presented it to Leo's management, in fact, Leo's father, and eventually, we were appointed to create and strategically build the global launch for Messi, which is the fragrance that launched pretty much last month globally. In fact, it's only launched in the USA and a couple of Southern American markets and Australia and New Zealand. The rest of the global markets follow. But I think, the reason we won that, I think, was just because we are an integrated media agency that can deliver creative content. And we ended up producing that with a company in the US called Smuggler. We had to shoot it in Miami because that's where he's now based, Leo. So we built a massive set full of mirrors in the back blocks of Miami. We shot it for a day and a half with his body double because we only had Leo for 4 hours. So we kind of had to shoot the commercial with the body double, finished it so that when he came in, everything was down and planned for the last second. So we had to do upwards of 50 stills shots. We had to get probably over a dozen live action shots with Leo, and he had to do 4 wardrobe changes all in 4 hours. And we got it done, thankfully, because everyone had invested quite a lot of money, in fact, millions and millions and millions. He was a charming, humble human, which I've met and shot with some global megastars before, and they've not been that. He was an amazing, amazing person, and very humble and very easy to work with, and a consummate professional. So at the moment, it's rolled out. The client is ecstatic. It's a fully integrated campaign. There's a whole stack of YouTube takeovers and performance video, and digitally led campaign in the US. Here, it's a probably a more traditional integrated mix through the Chemist Warehouse. So we're not planning on buying the media behind it in Australia. But yeah, it's going well. Sales are really strong in the US and solid in Australia and New Zealand so far. And it's been a great thing to work on, great for us to win it, and an honour to create it.
100%. I'm going to say for a international campaign like that, it must have had its challenges, but also brought some learning opportunities for the team. What did you take away from that particular campaign?
Yeah, when you create global work, which I've been lucky enough to do over my career on several occasions, you have to understand that everything, the visual ideas are the strongest ideas because they've got to transcend language. And obviously part of all of this was transcreation, which was where I think we actually here in our agency, we're editing Spanish versions, French versions, Chinese versions of this. And so, in fact, if there are actually different types of Spanish, there's Argentinian Spanish and Spanish. And so all these things had to be accounted for in how you cut all the pieces of it together and how you did the voiceovers and how you brought it together. And the key learning really is visual ideas are the best ideas when you're looking at something that has to cross borders and be globalized. And I think you also have to have a reason. In the case of Leo and the case of a fragrance, you have to find an idea that overlaps both of those things. I think you can fall into a trap with global sort of personality campaigns where the ad becomes about the global personality and not about the product. Or you can fall into the other trap where it becomes just about the product and the global personality could be interchanged with anybody. You know, a great campaign sort of overlaps. And where our overlap was that there was many sides to Messi that people didn't see. And when it comes to a fragrance, it says such about you, but you can't see it. So we played on the overlap of those two things. And I think that made it a really powerful spot. It's something that Leo really, really loved. And it was something that his manager loved because it is actually, and then you met him and you went, gee, this guy's he's not what I thought he was. He's perceived to be God, but he's just a real humble, nice person. And so I think kind of we hit the sweet spot with that.
And by sounds of you two have gone very, very, very well with the same sort of demeanour. Look,
my Spanish wasn't very good and his English is not very good, so we didn't have a lot to say to each other. But, you know.
Luckily, the visual gives it away anyway. So we've talked about them from a Messi perspective, you know, the creativity, the visuality. From a media owner perspective, given that's who's on the call today, how can they help you with pitching? What role do they play to help you be successful?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that, you know, you guys will all be working with independent agencies, and that means that you're working with smaller, you know, for the most part, smaller budgets and smaller clients, and smaller teams. And, you know, what you're probably finding out now is that, as we are, is that it's quite frustrating out there because clients are really nervous. They're really, they're worried about, you know, the effectiveness of their investment. And so what we're trying to do, and we're working with our media partners on any new media campaign, big or small budget, big national budget, state budgets, whatever it might be, is really trying to reassure our clients that one, it's going to be effective, and two, that we've got something new and different that's actually going to really help them and their brand stand out. So anything that our media partners can do that creatively, from a media perspective, show them and reassure them that we are going to get effectiveness, that we are going to get cut through, that we are going to help their brand stand out, really helps get them over the line at the moment. And, you know, we're just seeing, because there's a lot of back and forward with clients while they deliberate, we all get crunched for time. So you guys get crunched for, you know, avails, and we get crunched for time to plan it and time to create the advertising that goes in it. So everything's getting crunched together. So a really, really open line of communication with the agencies and proactively communicating with the agencies, I think, will not only make their life easier, it'll make your life easier too, because it's really easy in what we do to sort of play a little bit of kind of proposal tennis and then get a booking and then wait till the booking changes. And I think just dialogue and constantly staying in contact is a really, really good thing you can do to make life easier for you and your teams, but also just to help the agency, because it's predominantly not the agency that's creating some of the problems. It's just the client nervousness, and it's been like that for the last 6 to 9 months, and it's going to be like that for the next 12 months. So, you know, the closer we are to our media partners, the better it is for all of us, as we kind of help to reassure our clients that they are going to get bang for their buck. They are going to get a return on investment. And now's the time to confidently do that because their competitors probably aren't doing it.
That's great advice, Bill, and some real what-to-dos. Are there any from a partner perspective right now with the market they shouldn't be doing? Is there anything that's going to cause more frustrations?
No, I mean, I can't really put my finger on anything. I mean, I think the worst thing sometimes we can do is, because we feel like that clients are really nervous and they're not up for it, is to take the foot off the gas in terms of finding new and innovative ideas, and proactively putting them on the table to agencies. I think it's still a good time to do that. We were just talking to a partner the other day, and we have had some issues with this particular client. But we're talking about a piece of innovation and an idea to do a channel really differently, starting mid next year. So I think if you can deal with the short term and then work with your agencies to kind of come up with new and interesting things that are maybe 6 months or 9 months down the pipe, where you can go in with the agency, or the agency goes in on your behalf with really different way of doing things in your channel, the clients are up for that. And I think if you can give yourself the chance to to have a runway to do that, then you won't have the time pressures and frustration. So I think clients are still interested in new and innovative things, but I think you need to give them a runway to be able to accept it, onboard it, approve it, work out how to do it, and then have time to activate it and execute it properly. So yeah, I would encourage you not to think this is a time where you don't want to be proactive or you don't want to innovate. I think clients still want to see that, but I just think don't expect it to happen, in 3 months or 2.5 months, because it's just not moving quickly. And on the flip side of that, they're still open for deals. This is the contradiction of clients. They say they've got no money, and they say they don't have enough money, and the budgets have been cut and la-di-da. But more often than not, you walk in with a deal and say, "Hey, we've got this great deal from an outdoor company, or we've got this awesome idea to use radio differently, and this is a great deal. It's a value proposition. We've got to move." They're still open for that. So it's a contradiction in the market. So I think don't be put off by the market and the fact that it is a bit tough. I think if you can work with your agencies, there's still lots of opportunity.
That's great, Phil. And you sort of, as you mentioned just then, we're hearing these economic headwinds and tough economic climates. I'm going to ask you to put on your Nostradamus hat here and give everybody a bit of an insight from your perspective and what you're seeing in the market. What do you forecast for 2025? You sort of talked about maybe being a bit creative with some channels. What channels do you think the businesses will be buying?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a good question, Beck. Yeah, I think, where clients are moving to, it's a basic thing to say, but it's actually true. They're moving to channels where they know or they think they're going to get the most effective outcome. And I think the other thing that's happening is, because it's not as much more traditional media, or if it is, it's a real mix of traditional media and other media. The next question that gets asked straight away is, what's the creative we're running? How much content can we create to fill the channel? How many audiences are we reaching now? Because what happens hand in hand with that discussion is we're now not just targeting 2 or 3 audiences. We're targeting 6. We're targeting 9. And so therefore each of those audiences and each of those channel strategies need a separate content strategy and a separate creative strategy and creative approach, which then puts pressure on production budgets. So that's going to continue. In fact, that's just going to get more and more and more common and become a new challenge for integrated agencies like us, but also media agencies, pure play, who may be working with client in-house teams or another creative agency. So that's a huge dynamic that's going to keep playing out in the next 12 to 18 months as clients get their head around the fact that coming up with a 30 or 15 and 6 YouTube bumpers and a couple of social carousels just isn't going to cut it. And they're going to come to the media agency, and in turn, you guys going, it's not working as well as it should. And it's because the creative is wrong, and there's not enough, and it's not relevant enough, and it can't be optimized, and it can't be changed out as quickly as it should. So that's a huge dynamic that the whole industry's coming to grips with. It's also something that you guys can probably help on. I think, you guys are seeing what your other clients are doing. When you're dealing with an agency A, you've implemented campaigns for agency B, C, and D, and you've seen what the creative is that they've deployed, and you have an idea of how it's going. I think you guys have whether that's outdoor, radio, or digital, or programmatic, or anything. I think you guys have a role to help your clients, your media agency clients, to have a view on what type of content and what type of creative could work and what is working. And you don't need to come up with it. You just need to show them examples of things that you see are working well. And that's going to have huge power, I think, for you to get more share of the budget spend. If you can have that discussion with your media agency teams, and if they're integrated agencies, they'll certainly be open to that discussion because that's what clients are grappling with big time. And creative agencies are grappling with it who don't understand channel, because that reason they don't understand channel as well. So I think that's a dynamic and a trend that will continue. I think from a macro kind of ad spend level, I mean, it's no surprise there's lots of articles on it. Ad spend's flat or going backwards, and I think that'll just keep happening. But I think at the same time, if you're sitting there in one channel, what you can bet is a client is questioning the investment they've got in these other channels. So whether that's a search strategy that they've put too much money into, that they're now reassessing, well, that budget doesn't need to go up for that to be an opportunity for you. Because that means that there's an opportunity to shift budget into different channels. So that dynamic's going to keep happening. People are going to reassess what they've been using for the last 12 to 18 months, and they may not just be purely reducing the budget, they're shifting the budget. So that budget shift, I think, is a huge opportunity. If you guys are close to your agency teams and are front and center with new thinking, you can grab a share of that sort of budget shift from channel to channel.
And look, I'm going to take that as a subtle sales pitch also, everyone on the call today. IMAA Academy, if you don't know your competitors, learn about them via one of our many modules. Taking a bit of a sidestep here, Phil, like there's a lot of people on the call today who might be new to media, they're coming into media, you've had a long and successful career in advertising and marketing. What are your tips? What do you suggest everybody do or change or keep doing to be successful?
Yeah, I think I mean, I was told really early on in my career, and you probably heard it many times, but it's really true, and it's easy to forget sometimes in the pressure of fronting up to a meeting or diving into a meeting. And I think, and particularly when you've got to sell something, I mean, that's what we do. We're selling something. But I just think there's just so much value in listening and reading a room. And that's a physical read of the room. It's a body language read of the room. It's asking questions instead of presenting and talking. It's allowing space and room in a conversation rather than it being just a one-way dialogue as you rattle through 12 slides to get to the end to get the sale done. I think the more relaxed, calm, and kind of assimilated you are to a presentation, I think in your advantage. And I think I always learned that that you, even if you are presenting and you are trying to sell something, make sure it never feels like it. Make sure it feels like a discussion. And I still think no matter if that's you just in your business, in your company, managing up or doing an internal presentation to show how well you're doing, I think that just I think there's just real power in understanding, the vibe of the humans in the room before you start talking or as you're talking or as you're presenting. I don't think there's enough talking about that. And I think, if you see like you're losing someone, don't, shit yourself that you're losing someone. Stop and ask them if they're understanding what you're talking about. Like, just own the room a bit and own the dynamic of the conversation, because that's what everybody wants you to do. You're the one talking. So I think there's huge value in presenting well and integrating with who you're presenting, and keeping an eye on the climate of a meeting and a presentation and a room. It's of massive value, and I was always taught to do that. So I would say that's really good advice. I think the other thing is to get your inspiration from adjacent things. I think, a lot of people say, oh, well, you should have an interest outside of what you do or whatever. I spend a lot of time looking at global campaigns, and not necessarily award-winning campaigns. I spend a lot of time reading trade press from the US and the UK, and even just looking at the campaigns where I go, well, it's not bad work and I can see what they're doing there. It's not groundbreaking media or it's not hugely innovative, but they're big brands with big investments, and there's a reason why they're doing things. So I think always just keep an eye on what your media channels are doing in other markets. And it's not less about groundbreaking award-winning stuff. It's about just seeing what the bigger brands are doing and where the bigger spends are going, and how people are using those channels in overseas markets, particularly the UK and the US, because I just think that just gives you relevancy, it gives you lots of things to talk about, and it inspires thinking that comes from outside of your market and outside of your competitive set. So yeah, I follow a lot of the trade press over there, and probably spend a bit more time reading that than I do some of the trade press here. It's a simple tip.
That's a great tip. We've got a couple more questions before we run out of time, but Phil, I'm just going to sort of ask you and put you on the spot here. You're on the IMAA board. You're heavily involved as an independent agency owner. Is there anything people need to know about the independent sector which really will start to help our smaller indies succeed? Anything out there that you believe that everyone can be doing differently or should be doing or considering that'll help strengthen our sector as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this huge, no surprises of the membership base of the IMAA, but, and it's also on the pure play creative agency side as well, this massive fragmentation of indies and these smaller indies and these medium-sized indies and really large indies now. And that's just the dynamic of the business, as some of the large holdcos have got a bit weaker and being more challenged with profit, they've cut cost, and that's created a dynamic of people going, well, I'm going to go and start something myself. I've always wanted to do it. So this huge rise and fragmentation of independent media agencies and creative agencies all over Australia. I think that's going to slow down. And so what that means is if we are one, and you are one, and you're dealing with them, is that it's just not going to be good enough to be an indie anymore. Like, it's just not going to be interesting enough. If you were a pretty good indie and you had a couple of good clients and you had a little bit of momentum, you were off and running 2 years ago, right? The market's shifted. It's got a bit tougher. There's indies everywhere. There are so many shingles hung out of front doors now that the time is to actually double down on the quality of what you offer, and make sure that's right. And it's going to get harder. And that's good. That's good if you're good. And that's good if you're up for the challenge. But I think you've got to push the quality of what you're doing and what you're offering your clients up, because the markets have dynamics and they change. And I alluded to that at the beginning of this, and that's going to happen. And my sense is we're going to see, I reckon there's going to be a lot of consolidation in the independent agency sector in the next 2 years. We just saw it yesterday with Nunn acquiring a digital agency. I think you're going to see more of that. So I think you're going to see this consolidation of independent companies, which I think is a good thing for both sides of whatever that happens with that consolidation. And I think you're going to see, therefore, a rise of what you might call super indies. And that's happening globally. So really large, multinational, independently owned companies that are in 12 markets, 14 markets, 16 markets. I think you're going to see them come into the Australian market more. And that's going to put pressure on the independents, and it's going to put pressure on the existing holding company agencies as well. And the holding companies have spent the last, 18 months to 2 years reinventing themselves. So lots of holding company brands disappeared. Lots of holding company brands have been rationalised. Teams have been reduced and condensed and sharpened, and so you're going to see them kick back as well. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, but you'll see it shift. And I think, you've got to be on the top of your game to win. I think now it's just not going to be good enough to bring independent thinking and transparency to the table. They're kind of table stakes now. You've got to be good.
Thank you very much, Phil, for your time today. T, I can't see if any questions came through on the chat box today. But
nothing yet.
Thank you so much. And Phil, thank you for giving us an insight into also BCM, but also how you operate. And I think that's really great insight into the wider market and how media owners can also start to plan for not just 2025, but further ahead. Any final words, Phil, that you want to share before we move on?
No, not really. It's just nice to chat to everybody, and it's going to be an interesting time. I'm not downbeat. I'm upbeat. I think there's huge opportunity if you're ready to take it on, and if you have more energy than your competition, you're going to do really well in the next 12 to 24 months. It's just a shifting sands dynamic, but when isn't it? Is really, if I look back over the last 20 years, it's always changing, and you've just got to be aware of where the change is going before your competitors are.
So true. As I say, the one constant is always going to be change.
That's it.
Thank you very much, Phil. We really appreciate your time today. Lastly, partners, just as we wrap up today's session, just in terms of what's coming up. So we do have our biggest event of the year, the big grand finale, our IMAA Awards and celebration. So partners, if you haven't secured your 2 tickets, please do. It's going to be a great event, but more importantly, what's important about this event is you'll have a chance to speak to, again, maybe indies you don't necessarily have. So our board are flying in, our leadership team are flying in, a lot of our indies from actually WA and Melbourne and Brisbane are all coming down. So it's a really good opportunity to see the wider market all at one event. I guess the one joy I have of being in control of today, our 2025 Future Trends and Insights document, our white paper. It was due to be public, or we'll ask for submissions by this Friday. I have extended the deadline to next Friday. And partners, I do encourage you to submit a key trend or insight. This is your opportunity to put forward thought leadership to the independent sector, engage in trade press, and really position yourself and your channel in a different light. Independence Day 2025. So mark in your calendars, 19th of February from 8:30 at Hoyt's EQ. We're currently working with a range of guest speakers. We've locked in Tim Burrows. I'm not going to reveal anything yet, but we are hoping for a really interesting CEO panel, which is one that you're not going to want to miss. 2 tickets per partner, so please reach out to Tian if you'd like to attend Independence Day 2025. And look, lastly, we include this every presentation because, as they say it again, say it again, and say it again. We want to make sure that you're receiving your ROI for your partnership. So please showcase your IMA certified badge. Include your content and branding with the IMAA Academy. So this is a chance to include your media kit. So when currently the 1,600 students, partners, and agency owners run through the Academy, it's your brand that's top of mind. We also have our members only learning hub. So as you can see, we house their partner training. So Taboola, Pinterest, Amazon, Criteo. This is a chance for if you've got your own internal training, you can house it on our website and we will link through to your training. At all our IMA events and our website will have your logo. So make sure you keep us updated on any changes. We are looking for 2025 and would love to attend your offices. So if you'd like to host the IMAA, reach out to T. So Nikki, Sam, and I can come along to your office, spend time with your sales teams, similar to like Phil ran through today. Sam likes to give an overview of the agencies and what's happening in the market. And don't forget to pre-record special webinars. So you don't need to wait until your one-off a year Insights Innovation webinar. Sam will record a session with you at any time, which I'll then include in the newsletter and also circulated across. And again, the newsletter, which I just touched on, you can put staff profiles, events, your own internal activations. As Phil mentioned, businesses are still looking for offers and discounts. So if there is something that you want us to get your message to market, the next newsletter will be coming out the last Wednesday of the month. So please reach out. And that is it. Thank you so much for your time today. We had, 70 odd people dial in today, which is one of the records, Phil. So like I said, clearly you're the man of the moment and in demand. So thank you for your time. Partners, thank you for attending. And again, any questions, please reach out to the team and have a great day, guys.